We're in the office and we're doing more of a product review. A good friend of mine, Ken Hand, his website is corvairmechanic.com, has come up with a new clutch for the Corvair that is just absolutely friggin' awesome. We tested this in my car and we deliberately tried to burn up the clutch. So we had, two guys that just, kind of hard on equipment anyhow, and we did our absolute best to burn up this clutch, and we never were able to. Did multiple fourth gear starts in this thing. I mean, just trying to put heat into it and accelerated wear, and just tried to wipe out the clutch linings. And my car, 5,000 miles is about all I get out of a clutch. If I'm running hard on it, hitting second gear, the thing just never really locked up real tight, and we just fill the car with clutch smell when you hit second. So I was kind of excited about this, and I'm looking for something so I'm not constantly changing clutches in this beast. And he came up with this dual disc clutch setup that is just absolutely awesome. I took it over to my friends at Dart, went in and saw the Pro Stock guys, and they were really impressed with it. George DeLorean told me that it reminds him a lot of the dual disc setup that he had in his 427 Camry back in the day. But this is the clutch. This is one of the prototypes. This is like the second or third one made. So there are little minor tweaks that I made to it, and there'll be more, possibly made by Ken. I took a lot of weight out of the starter ring here because it just wasn't really needed. More than likely, that's a mod that Ken won't be doing unless, you want to pay a little extra for it because it takes a lot of time and then there's some balancing. Oh, that's something else. I did balance this, and even with all the weight that I took out of it, and I balanced this in pieces. And with all the weight that I took out of this, the ring gear was the most poorly balanced piece, and it was only 9.8 gram inches out of balance. For OEM, I mean, an OEM flywheel, if you get it that close, you're lucky. I put it on the balancer, spun it up, and we have it to 0.3 of a gram inch. The flywheel itself was off by like one point something gram inches. So, and if you don't lighten this at all, I'm sure that it would be right within that 1 or 2 gram inch range. So you could just take this, throw it in your car, no problem. The way I have it cut down now, the clutch pressure plate, the ring gear, the floater, all the bolts, the whole 9 yards weighs about 15.5 pounds. And the big thing is the reduced diameter. Is normally, your flywheel would be out to the, just about the edge of the ring gear. This is a much reduced diameter, holding that weight in closer. The moment of inertia is reduced greatly. I'd like to tell you a couple of things, a couple of changes that we made. We'll take this apart and show you the pieces. It's really awesome. It's got ceramic linings. When we were doing the testing, we were posting on the internet about it, and I mentioned multiple fourth gear starts, and some people kind of questioned that. It's a valid question. How does that relate to use? I mean, who's going to be going and doing these multiple fourth gear starts? It doesn't really relate to use. It's just that we had limited time to really try and accelerate wear on this clutch. And doing the fourth gear starts helped that. It put a ton of heat into it. And if it had been a normal clutch, a normal clutch wouldn't have held up to half of the fourth gear starts that we did on this thing. Something else that's neat is I didn't even think of all the heat that we were putting into it. The first time that it was driven, I drove it. After that, we pulled it out, inspected everything, threw it back in again, and then Ken was driving it, and I wasn't around. But I pulled the car out, and it acted like a normal clutch. It wasn't grabby, it wasn't greasy, engaged nicely and cleanly. It could engage fast, it could engage slow, any way that you want. Did several fourth gear starts in this thing, and I know there's a lot of heat in there. It never felt different. we didn't do any 60-foot times or anything to see if there was any actual measurable difference in the way the clutch grabbed. But seat of my pants, I could not tell any difference. I didn't even think about the heat we were putting into it. The first day of testing, after we were done testing, we pulled back into the garage. It took at least an hour for us to get the engine back out, and the flywheel was 176 degrees still. So we had put some serious heat into this thing. But anyhow, let me show you some of the little minor changes that I've made, and I know Ken's having some changes similar to mine made. And this is going to be a terrific unit. And not just for performance application. I mean, if I were putting together just a bone stock car, I'd throw one of these clutches in it because you'll never wear it out. I mean, even after all the torture that we did, we destroyed the flywheel, we destroyed the pressure plate, but the clutch linings had about 6 thousandths wear on them, and the clutch discs themselves, they're 58 thousandths approximately, and they got worn down to 52 or 50. So I mean, these things last unbelievably. But let me show you, some of the pieces, some of the changes we made, and we'll discuss this. The first change that I made was the standoffs. This is what the original standoff looked like. You notice here, it's got some flats cut on it, and it's also a reduced diameter. These are the standoffs that I made. No reduced diameter, no flats cut onto them. Also, these standoffs have a 3/8/16 bolt machined into the base of them. Going into aluminum, you need a coarse thread. I used a button socket head screw, Loctited into here, and then made a installing tool and slammed these down on with some red Loctite too, so they're good and tight. There's plenty of room for clearance back here. That was checked. I mean, there's tons of clearance all around in the bell housing, so having these bolts out is not a problem. Here's the main reason they changed the standoffs. If you'll take a look, if I go right here, you see that with the clutch assembled, the pressure plate was not completely riding on the large diameter. You see that it's only partly on the large diameter. Part of it is basically off unsupported. So I wanted these to be supported completely. Something else that's really cool about this is, the clutch lining is on the pressure plate, the floater, and the flywheel. The clutch discs are just thin steel, and this is hardened steel. But here's our floater, and there's the lining on the clutch. One other change that I made is part of the problem we had. Like I said, we got the clutch hot. We got the clutch so hot there was all kinds of blue and orange and all kinds of neat colors in this steel. The floater had to get up to 1,000, 1,200 degrees. I don't know how much of that got into the flywheel, but it had to be quite a bit. Like I said, we just ridiculously abused this thing. We distorted the flywheel and egg-shaped the bolt holes because we had this is made just for the bolts to go straight through, no plate or anything. I decided, because of the issues that we had with that I wanted to use a hardened washer. And there was enough clearance between the bolt head and the hardened washer, and the clutch disc rather, even with the hardened washer, but it was a little bit close. I decided I want a little bit more, so if you look here, I machined just 30 thousandths of an inch off the bolt head. You can still see, here we get up close, you can still see the lines, and this is a stock Corvair flywheel bolt. So I just took 30 thousandths off, gives me plenty extra clearance. And now the load is dissipated slightly onto onto the flywheel. There's no chance of it digging in. You know, we're all set there. Also on the standoffs, one other change that I made was the standoffs originally used this little socket head bolt. You see here it's a 3/8 16, has that little tiny center and screws into here. Because it's going into steel, it doesn't need to be 3/8 16. So what I did is I enlarged the spot face on the pressure plate. Enlarged the spot face so that I could stick a washer down in here, a hardened washer. And I'm using a grade 8 3/8 24 bolt that I cut to length because I needed, I think I'm using 1 1/4 inch. And they had 1 inch or 1 1/2. So anyhow, my standoffs are all machined with the fine thread. So this way when I put this together, more of the torque is going into stretching the bolt than overcoming the friction of turning. And also, I've got a, 35 to 40 foot-pounds. I've got a nice spot here where it's real easy to put a 9/16 socket on, and so that'll make tightening this down much easier than that little tiny bolt. I numbered all of these is when I balanced them, even though I balanced each piece separately as I was bolting them together, and actually it was just the flywheel and the pressure plate and ring gear that were balanced. The floater and the half of the pressure plate that floats, I didn't balance those for the simple reason they're close enough as is, and two, they're able to rattle around in here a little bit, so you'd never have them perfect anyway. So from the way this thing balanced out at first, was just so close. There was just no need to worry about balancing anything like this, which is, I'm sure, just a perfect balance. But anyhow, when we do install this, I know these bolts are perfect. These are Corvair crankshaft bolts. Just the same, we'll thread them into the crankshaft by hand first, just to make sure that we have enough thread engagement or enough clamping force without hitting the crank gear. Also, as these bolts go through, there'll be red Loctite on the tip of the bolt, and right near where the bolt is at the flywheel will be some red high temp RTV. That's because these would be an oil leak if you don't put some kind of RTV. But I definitely want some red Loctite on there, because I don't want these bolts to loosen up. The clutch assembly that we overheated, these bolts all eventually loosened up from all the heat and expansion and contraction, but that's not unusual to this flywheel. I mean, it would have happened with any aluminum flywheel that we overheated the way we did. When I know we overheated the flywheel because when you had the standoffs all tightened down, which there's plenty of clearance here for this. I mean, this thing, it's able to rattle around in here. When you had the standoffs all tightened down, you couldn't move that floater without a hammer. So, I mean, this whole thing had been just beat up from the heat. That's not an issue so long as you don't do about, I don't know, a dozen fourth gear starts in a row and then rag on it on a drag strip. So you'll definitely have better luck with it. But anyhow, it's real simple assembly here. You got the first button. I did mention I numbered all these. We put one at 6 o'clock here, or 12 o'clock rather. And even though there's no need to number this piece because it was not balanced, I still do it just because I like things to be nice and organized. So there's this one, our second pressure plate, and we'll get that one there. Then our ring gear, and you can see there's been a whole bunch of weight removed on the Bridgeport with a rotary table. But get that right here like that. Now our pressure plate. Throw this down, we'll just kind of lock her down real fast. Whenever I'm doing these, either the flywheel or pressure plate bolts, I number, 1 through 6 clockwise, and I'll do 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. Which I mean that was that, 1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4. But yeah, just so you're doing them kind of in a pattern, so you draw everything down evenly. It doesn't take a lot to disengage this. I put this on the press and stuck a dial indicator on it, and at about 200 thousandths press on the diaphragm here, I'm able to move the clutch disc with my fingers. So, and what's nice is that when it engages and disengages, it's nice and clean, and you can drive this thing completely normally, like a bone stock car. It'll perform like bone stock. But if you really want to get on it, and you need a fast-acting clutch, this is great. And what's also wonderful too is this thing will work even when it's wet with oil. So if you got an oil leak or your trans on Corvair, sometimes you got that long input shaft, and they're known at times to leak. If you got that going on and you got a bunch of oil in there, this thing will handle it no problem. But this is it here, fully assembled. And if you notice when I balance, let's see if we can find it. Here we go. These two little divots, I didn't even use a drill bit, I just used a centering drill. Those two little divots were all that it was needed. And then for the ring gear, I had to knock down these two little points here. You see we got the little points. Knock down these 2 points, a little bit of grinding around in here, and this whole assembly now is balanced to 3/10 of a gram inch. So the thing just spins just absolutely beautifully, no vibration or anything. And it's important with the Corvair because you got the rear main bearing here, then you have the crank gear, then you have the flange, the flywheel flange and seal, and your flywheel, all this, and the ring gear way out here. So it's really hanging out there in the breeze. That's why I wanted that balanced after removing all of this weight. This is a 3/16 steel, and prior to the weight being removed, I think it was 16 and a half or 17 pounds. So it's still much lighter than a lightweight, lightweight Dale unit or anything for the Corvair. You can contact Ken Hand, Handy Car Care. It's CorvairMechanic.com, and he doesn't have this on his website yet because this is a really new product. But this is awesome. You put this in your Corvair, and I can guarantee you will never wear this sucker out. I mean, this thing will just last forever. I don't care what kind of use you give it. It's awesome clutch, and as long as you keep the thing under 12 or 1300 degrees or so, you shouldn't have any problem with any bolts loosening up like I did. But like I said, we really abused the daylights out of that thing. And even after all that abuse, I still drove it in the Dream Cruise. I drove it from Fowlerville to home to Royal Oak, and that's like an hour drive. The thing just performed famously, and even when it started making some noise at the Dream Cruise, just because the flywheel bolts had loosened up and this whole unit was shaking, the thing still performed flawlessly. I mean, the clutch just worked great. So, I'm real happy to put this in my car. I've got a new motor I'm building that'll go in next year. This will go in with that. I mean, this clutch will get passed down from motor to motor in the hot rod. So, awesome deal. Definitely, I would highly recommend this. There may be a clutch that's as good as this, but you'll never find one better. I can guarantee that. Okay, and believe me, I don't make anything off of this. It's just I'm really impressed with quality, and this is a real quality piece. And Ken's made a real commitment to trying to do things for the Corvair community. And there's there are several guys that do that, but there's not a whole lot of Corvair racing pieces around. And like I said, this could be used in your race car or your grocery getter. Throw this thing in, you'll never need another one. And really costly. You have to contact Ken about the cost. But when you start doing up the numbers, this is not much more than buying a lightweight flywheel, clutch, and pressure plate. So it's really a worthwhile investment. All right, thanks a lot. Look for our next YouTube video. Where are you? There we are. Next YouTube video, we're going to be making a torque plate for the Corvair big bore, so that we can check our deck height on the big bore motor that we've been doing, and we'll also sooner or later be getting in fuzzing the cylinders with the stress plate on, so that we'll get just want to make them straight and round, and be working on the cylinder heads. We got some stuff going on there now too, having the heads coated and what have you. So we got a lot of stuff happening. I know I haven't been posting much on YouTube lately, but it's coming. And I appreciate all the subscribers, and I really want to thank you all for subscribing. And I really want to earn your subscription. So we're going to start putting some more content on there. But we've just been so darn busy, and we're healthy now too. So really cool. All right, thanks a lot. Catch you next time.